Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This is CSC 255, Operating System Deployment Best Practices. Inside the Module 1 content, inside the references, I added an important notes folder. So if you go inside references, above the study guide, there's now an addendum added and a folder called important notes. Inside the important notes are some very rough, in some cases, handwritten notes, right? And the purpose is to provide additional information so that you can navigate the selection of proper operating system types depending on the scenario. And some of this is already familiar. What I wanted to do was to open up a copy of each one of these very quickly. And some of this will look familiar, but then some of it's new. And I wanted to make sure that you had this information. Don't forget to check out the addendum also. So the addendum inside the reference is just some other information about the choice of operating systems and some related issues, especially for large organizations like WAPA, right? And there are automated options to set up an operating system and load it through a network. And it's called PXE or PXE for short, PXE, pre-executable environment. You boot the system from the network card instead of a hard drive and then load across the network. So just check that out briefly. One other interesting resource at the very bottom here, we're not going to look at this one, but there's an online article about how to use PowerShell in Server to create a new user. That's just helpful information. And so that's one way to create new users. And you'll be using PowerShell here and there throughout the course. So without further ado, what I want to do is open up each of these one at a time, and you're going to say, oh yeah, that looks familiar. So this is hardware, application software, and the OS is in between. That has to do with the purpose. That's nothing new, right? And we talked about this too, yeah? So operating systems or any system can be designed with generic design criteria, and the three big interests is ease of use, features or functionality, and security. Does this look familiar? Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah, that looks familiar.
So when we talk about operating system market interests and we'd say, oh, ease of use, that's the Mac world. Making it extensible so there's lots of features, that's the Windows world. And making it efficient so it's secure or it's really good at one thing, that's the Linux world, right? I'm going to go ahead and close this. We've already shown you this, that the three functions play into different zones on the hardware. That's a review. Now, this is something that's new information. So when you have operating systems and you're providing resources with those operating systems, if you're dealing with specific types of scenarios, in some cases, some resources are more important than others. In particular, for servers, the big three are storage, calculation, and bandwidth. So let's talk about Google or Amazon, right? When you're talking about which operating system to choose for a given interest, if you want to be very efficient at one thing or another, you're probably going to be picking a Linux system. Could be Red Hat, it could be CentOS, and you could be running something like Amazon Web Services. If you're doing lots of content because you're doing streaming media like a Netflix, right? Then there's network IO that's got to be very specialized and efficient. So when you have a place like Amazon, all three of those interests matter. The calculation, the storage, and the network, because they have millions of customers. When you look at Netflix or Spotify or iTunes, Apple TV, Hulu, those are all streaming media. It's the storage and the bandwidth. You have to be able to play up on demand different programs, and you have to stream it. So those two interests are really important. The point I'm trying to make is that if you want to be highly efficient in storage and bandwidth, you're probably going to pick a Linux operating system and tune the kernel. It's called tuning the kernel, right? So you're going to add special drivers for network connectivity, and you're going to have a huge disk array. So you're going to have disk drivers, that kind of thing. How many of you are familiar with Pixar Studios? Anyone?
Yeah, of course.
And Jurassic Park, right? So when you have movie studios with special effects, it's calculation, and there's massive amounts of data that are used in order to simulate graphics. So it's calculation and storage. Again, a special version of Linux or Unix. Silicon Graphics was a company that came along just when Jurassic Park was coming out, right? So that was a special platform and a version of Unix. With Google, it's storage, everybody's information as you click and interact. They store, I don't know if you knew this, but Google stores every single mouse click, every single keystroke you have ever entered into any device in the entire history of your digital existence, which means there's a lot of storage and there's a lot of calculations. That's how they know when you're pulling up web screens, the things you're interested in. They're very intrusive about what kind of information they keep. If you have special research facilities or you have simulations for hurricane prediction and that kind of thing, research to do cold fusion or nuclear weapons research, that kind of thing, you need all three. So when you're doing supercomputing, you need all three of those interests. And in most cases, you're going to pick a finely tuned version of Linux, okay, and not so much Macs and others. When you talk about what servers do as a platform, there are operating systems that are finely tuned as web servers. We talked about that before. CentOS, it's free. It's very good at it. Microsoft has each of these roles built in, so they've extended the functionality. They've added features and functionality. So Microsoft it can be a file server. It can be used to manage a network. It can serve up web pages, and it can run database and email. So if you want one platform, if you want very high performance specialty platforms, then you're looking at a Linux installation. This is something that's similar to what we saw before, but a little further down. This is the screen I want you to pay close attention to. So when you're trying to choose which operating system to work with, you have to ask some questions. If you have to have a professional infrastructure, it has to be licensed, it has to be commercial. If there are legal issues, if there's matters of life and death, you're going to want to use commercial operating systems like Windows. If you have to do commercial, but you're on a budget, you can get away with just paying for support, and you can use Red Hat Linux. So if you're government or it's important, you can use Red Hat Linux, but that's for cases where your budget is limited. If you're dealing with entertainment, quality of life issues, you're in business to provide services to customers, you can use open source. You don't have to use something that requires a license. You don't have to, like Windows. You don't have to use something that requires support, like Red Hat, for less. You can use open source versions of operating systems. And you can use things like Fedora, where it's the latest, greatest version of Red Hat with new features, advanced features. It's kind of like a beta version of Red Hat. You need to be able to parse out in every situation, will the platform you use provide the means to make a living? If the answer is yes, choose A or B on the previous page. Okay. So if you're making a living, you want to choose one of these two types of operating systems. If you're going to provide services for health and safety, that has to do with matters of life and death, choose only A or B. Don't choose an operating system that's open source where there's no support and there's no license and all that, right? Because if somebody dies, what are you going to tell them? Oh, I ran this on a box that had Kali on it. Go to jail, go directly to jail, don't pass go, don't collect $200. Does everybody understand what I'm saying here? Does everybody understand the interests at stake here?
I guess. Can you run that one more time? Just to be on the safe side.
If you need to choose an operating system, a type of operating system for a platform that provides health and safety, like 911, first responders, police, fire and rescue, or emergency room, right? So if somebody's having a heart attack, health and safety stuff, you don't want to choose an operating system that's open source where you don't have paid support, or you don't have a professional operating system, what's considered to be a commercial operating system. So you'll choose A or B. You'll choose Windows Server or you'll choose Red Hat Linux, one of those two. If the matters of life and death are at stake, okay? What about if you're doing something for the government, has to do with compliance, taxes, regulations? Again, you're going to choose A or B. Or if you're doing something for entertainment, quality of life, you're providing services for small businesses, that's when you can choose B or C, and you don't have to use Windows. I just thought it was important to take the time to walk through that so that there's a little clearer understanding of the different operating system types and market interests. We talked yesterday about, or in previous classes, about ease of use or extensibility or efficiency, and how some have better performance or security, others have a great deal of versatility. Windows is definitely good for every scenario, unless you're doing something that, doesn't involve life or death. It's you're not trying to make a living, so your income depends on it, right? Would you use something free off the internet if your income depends on it?
No.
Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of people set up like business profiles in Facebook and they use Gmail, and it's like, yeah. And then they're shocked when, the public really isn't running to them. They're not getting the kind of business they thought. Could be that you're using like free stuff and it's not out there as much as you think. So these are related issues to operating system choices. And part of deployment is making the right choice of which type of operating system to install in the first place. I hope that makes sense. So those resources are now inside module 1, inside the references folder in this important notes, right? And we've got the addendum now. So any questions before we get back to the solution? Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing, and Milrain, are you ready to share your screen?
Yeah, sure.
So Milrain was working on the solution, and he had used the server install media and the license last season for another class. And now he's running into a snag. So in the last part of the solution, can everybody see here on the screen where it says local server? Can you hold your pointer over where it says not activated? Okay, so if you
Isn't
click
that like
on
the
that,
product key?
yes, so you have a product key and you're gonna put in the standard product key. But
Okay.
when he clicks on this, it should bring up a screen. And there's the screen. And you may experience this same kind of thing, right? So what we're gonna do now is ask Milrain to stop sharing your screen so he can copy and paste the standard server activation key into the window, and then he's going to click next. And then Milrain, you cut your screen share back on again so we can see the result, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So he has a text file with the standard edition activation key and the data center activation key.
Okay, just making sure that it was correct. And activate. See what happens.
Can you share your screen again?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it says, hey, it's already used on another device. And that's because in a previous season, he used this activation key in the install media, right? So here's the good news. Click close. Now click, let's see if you can scroll down a little bit. Okay, so let's click the troubleshoot option.
Right up here? Okay.
Yeah. And it says, I changed my hardware on this device. So what I want you to do is to click, I changed hardware on this device recently.
Okay.
When you use the key in another virtual machine and then you create a new virtual machine, in a sense, you're changing the hardware, right? You're creating a new server. So what's going to happen next is that it's going to ask you to sign in with your student ID. So go ahead and do that. Your email at students.uvi.edu.
Okay.
And this is the same thing that each of you can do if you're running into the same problem.
Yeah, okay, this seems correct. Yeah. Sure, I put it in correctly.
Take out the students.
Take out the students.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we took out that dot. Okay. Try it again.
Yeah.
That is wild. Oh, I'm sure of that.
There could be like a comma instead of a period or a space afterwards. Sometimes it's pretty picky.
Yeah, I was just gonna look at. Okay, yeah. So I'm looking at my account name.
So it should say at students.uvI.edu.
Yeah, I didn't just misspell my own name. Okay. Okay, I'll try the space like you said. So I'll put students back in and try the space
Yeah.
and see. Maybe that's the problem. Nope.
Well, yeah, just hit next.
Oh wow. Maybe I should just do this at school.
Well, that's,
campus.
okay, so
Maybe
that's the
that
other
is
thing
the
that can, yeah, that's the other thing that can happen is that you're doing this from your home, right? Or business?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing it for my home.
And you're on St. Thomas or St. Croix?
St. Croix, St. Croix. No.
You can use this, put your 900 number in there.
Am I
Instead
not?
of
Okay, sure. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Okay, okay. Well,
No, no,
no.
no, go back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's go back and let's cancel this out and then click the link again, okay?
So
So,
this, click this
yeah, do
again.
that. And there's an option for phone support, right? Sign in options, click that one. So, no,
Yeah.
yeah, cancel out of this. And just click close.
Okay.
So activate by phone.
Oh,
So let's select the country or region. The Virgin Islands, US Virgin Islands, probably in that pull down list. So hit that.
yeah.
Of course, it would be all the way down.
Yeah.
There it is. Hit next. Ah, okay. So this is, so what they want you to do is they want you to, and this is what I had to do with mine, okay?
Hmm.
I called the toll-free number. Then
Right.
I punched in each of those numbers in series from 1 through 9.
Okay.
And then I clicked enter confirmation ID.
Okay.
But I used my phone. And if you walk through this process, it'll clear your key because it knows that you're from the University of the Virgin Islands by the original product key. Okay.
Okay.
Now you don't have to do,
So
yeah, you don't have to do this in class right now.
okay. Okay. Okay.
But that's the process you walk through and it does work and I've done it. Now, let me show you an alternate process.
Okay. So come out of this for now.
Yeah, come out of this.
Okay.
There is another way to activate your license. And what you have to do is pull up an administrative command prompt. So you're going to go to search and type in CMD. Then you're going to right click that and run as administrator. And now, just out of curiosity, you can browse the internet with this machine, right? Like if you click Edge, it'll go and open up a web page. You want to do that just to make, because sometimes you can get activation misfires because the network isn't all there.
This is connected to the internet.
Just say start without your data, continue without this data, confirm and start browsing. Let's go to like Google or something.
Okay.
Google.com.
It seems like it's working. Yeah.
Okay, it's working. So you can close the browser.
Okay.
And let's go back to that. You have an administrative prompt. So I want you to type this in. And this is the weird part. You're going to copy your server activation key out of the text file when I tell you to. And then when you click back into,
Okay.
and then when you click back into this window, you're going to use your right mouse key and it'll paste that key in there after the command is in place, okay?
All right.
So here's what you're going to type in. SLMGR.
SLMGR
Space
space. Okay.
/IPK
/IPK.
space. Now you're going to stop sharing your screen
Okay, and then
and then
put in
copy and paste copy the server activation key, click back into the virtual machine command prompt window, hit the right mouse button, and then hit enter. And then wait for it.
I can't seem to get it to copy and
Oh,
paste in.
oh,
So
okay.
I'll just have to type it in.
So
Yeah.
just type it in.
With the dashes as well, right?
Yeah, with the dashes as well.
Okay. Just making sure.
And in caps and all that, right?
Yeah.
So when you hit enter, what's going to happen is that a little pop-up screen will come up and it'll either say key activated or it'll say, oh, you have a mistake. In which case you got to use the phone method.
So I'm just double checking that I typed in everything correctly. Okay. Then just press enter, right?
Yep, just hit enter. Now, we don't want to see your product key, but if you look at the bottom of the taskbar, or if you minimize windows, there might be a little pop-up that comes up.
Okay, yeah. I finally, for some reason, I had to click enter twice for some reason. I don't know what was going on there. Yes, but now it says yes, install product key successfully.
Oh, yay!
Okay, so
Okay, now watch this. Type in.
just exit out of all that.
No.
Oh.
Enter the command CLS so that you wipe the product key from the screen.
CLS. Okay, yeah, everything's gone.
All right, now share your screen again. There's one more command you got to do. You got to activate the key.
Okay. Oh, sure.
So you install the key with IPK. Type in SLMGR.
SLMGR.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Then a space.
Yep.
Then /ATO. That stands for activate the ticket object. Hit enter. So there'll be another little pop-up in a second. And it may say, oh, it was unsuccessful, or oh, this happened, or it could say a variety. Yeah, it could say, oh, the product key could not be activated.
Okay. So I will have to do the
could not be used. So click OK. And so you loaded the product key and that was successful. Then you tried to activate it and it said, yeah, you can't use it. So now you'd use the phone method. Half the time you say ATO, a different error message will come up. But if you refresh the screen and go back to Server Manager.
Okay.
If you refresh the screen, like where the little swirly circle is next to the flag at the top.
Oh, yeah, right.
You know that? Half the time you do that, if you install the product key, it does the rest if you're connected. And sometimes it doesn't. Oh, the other thing you should do, the other thing you should do is change the time zone. So you're sitting in the Virgin Islands, but your server is showing a Pacific time zone, and that can confuse your activation process as well.
Okay, so go to this right here.
Go there, change the date, change time zone. Hit the pull down. Select Georgetown, La Paz, Manaus, San Juan.
Okay, oh yeah.
Hit OK and OK. Yeah. And after class, call the number, do the thing, punch in the code. It's a pain in the butt, but it does clear the license for reuse.
Okay.
Okay.
ATO again, or should I do it again?
You could hit your up arrow key once and hit enter. I might,
Let's see. Yeah. Good.
yeah, okay. So it knows that you used the key and it, you know, so many months have passed and it thinks that you still have that thing running somewhere. So when you go through the
Okay.
phone, when you're calling the phone number, they're going to get your cell phone number and then they're going to cross-reference, okay, this is through UVI. And as I said, I did it before and things work just fine. If you hit the refresh though, you should be able to see, hit the refresh again, you should see the time zone change.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
There it is. Okay. All right. So everybody's experience is going to be different, and you have two different methods you can use to make the activation key work if you run into problems. I can provide one-on-one assistance, or we can actually contact ITS if the problem persists. Milrain, why don't you stop sharing the screen now? And I'd like to demonstrate another troubleshooting method. So can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a server from last season, right? Same kind of situation. And it was working okay. And sometimes what happens is that I put it to sleep or I'm running updates and it chokes. Or I'm using a different version of VirtualBox. So this thing was built when it was 7.0.2. Now I'm using different extensions. And I had to pause it. So I paused the machine and then I saved it. And evidently in the middle of the update process, it didn't like that. So I've got a server I can use from last season, or I started the process, but then I updated VirtualBox and now it's hamstrung. And what I want to do is demonstrate what you do to work through this and rebuild the system as if you could take the hard drive out, plug it into a whole new server, and then because all of the install media is inside that hard drive, as long as the hard drive data is not corrupted, you can basically just toss the other hardware components of the server, use the same hard disk, and then voila. The trick is to know which operating system you're using, to know how much memory and processors, to know if there are other things that are turned on, like nesting and paging, PAE NX, Hyper-V virtualization, the memory for display and the type of display, and then of course where I have that hard disk. Now I can transplant the hard disk to a different location, and I'm going to demonstrate how to do that. So you can also store virtual hard disks, VDI or VHD, on a thumb drive and then move them to a different machine, and that's useful. Before I start that, I'm going to ask you to pause for a second, and then I'm going to walk through those steps. So hang on just a moment. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
So I have this 2022 standard server from last season. And now that I've updated VirtualBox, it's acting wonky. And it was originally installed on the C drive. So if I look at the storage and I look at where that's loaded, it's loaded in the C drive VHD folder, right? But I have a new system. I want to move this virtual hard disk, and all of the other components of this virtual machine are pointing to that C drive, expecting to see this here. So if I move the hard disk and I'd like to rebuild the virtual machine somewhere else, I'm going to replace all these other components, but keep the virtual hard disk. It's kind of like pulling the disk out of a box and putting a brand new setting up a brand new box and just plugging in the old hard disk. That's what we're talking about. Does everybody understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm going to remove the virtual machine, but instead of deleting all the files, I'm just going to remove the machine itself. Now, before I do that, I'm going to take a screenshot of this so I can keep my place about how many gigs of RAM, how many processors, all the other things, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit print screen. And I will open up a new paint window and just paste this for reference, right? Then I'll go ahead and remove this, remove only. And now I have a clean situation. I'll close VirtualBox because I don't want any memory of that previous machine to exist. I'll go into File Manager, into my C drive, into the VHD folder where my disk was sitting before. And this time I'm going to drop it into a new hard drive right here. And that means that I'll have a lot more space and breathing room to operate this virtual machine. So I want to make sure I get a good copy, a complete copy, as soon as this is done. That's a 40 gig disk. I'm going to go ahead and show the properties of this. And remember 770112. And now I'm going to go into here on the other drive. And I'm going to look at the properties. And I'm going to see 770112. That means the entire virtual hard disk came across. So now I can go back to the C drive into my VHD and delete this, right? I can delete this thing. And I can go into the virtual machines and find server 2022. And I don't want this thing to be hanging around waiting on me. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that as well. All right. Now I'll build the new server 2022, SVR 2022, and I'll have the same name, but I'll do it from this disk. So SVR 2022. Now I'll open up VirtualBox again. I'll create a new machine. I'll name it SVR 2022. And the folder I'm going to put it in will be that E drive in the VM folder, right? So I just want to make sure that I'm there. And I don't need an ISO image. So I don't really have to worry about it. What's more important is this. I want to make sure I choose Windows 2022. And I'll switch to expert mode actually, because I want to be able to specify the hard disk. So yeah, I'm gonna put this in here again and then make sure this is selected. And then for hard disk, I'm going to use an existing hard disk, right? And I go out to, I have to add that server hard disk. So I'm going to add the E drive hard disk server 2022. Now I can use it, right? So there's my server hard disk on the E drive I'm going to use for this machine. Now for the hardware, I'm going to specify 6 gigs of RAM, 6172. I'll start matching the same components that I had before. 2 of these, right? 2 CPUs. I'll say finish. And then I go into the settings again. And now I can do things like turn on I want to uncheck the floppy because I didn't have that. I'm going to move this down because I don't need to boot from the optical. In the processor, I'm going to enable PAE NX because that's what I had before, right? I had NAE NX and Hyper-V Paravirtualization, nested paging. So I'll go acceleration, nested paging. And what did I have here? Hyper-V paravirtualization. So, whoops. Hyper-V. Everybody see that? Display is 128. Did I have VBox SVGA or the other? I had VBox SVGA, but I had 3D acceleration turned on. So I should be good to go. For network, I want to leave it NAT. That's going to be less problematic at first. So one of two things is going to happen. Either there are other recovery options if this doesn't work, but what we're going to do here is click the start button and see if we get a server screen. And if we don't, then on Friday, we'll cover some other recovery options for the rebuild. It may include using the distribution media and using your phone to reactivate because this thing didn't take. That's part of the process when you're dealing with licensed versions of software. You have to, in order for all the features to work correctly, it has to be properly licensed, okay? So without further ado, let's see if this solves the problem. And it's starting, and if I come over here and double click, it should open up a window. Or I'm over here at least. Oftentimes, simply swapping out the digital components, when you upgrade between VirtualBox versions, you get these weird hiccups. And preserving the disk, but rebuilding a similar machine can get you past a given hurdle. Now you'll notice the screen freezed here. So one of the things that we want to do is to just give it a little time to think, because sometimes when an operating system wakes up in a new machine, it has to get its bearings or work some additional diagnostics to clear and then come up. The important point is to be patient and not to rush. So, to be continued, on Friday, we'll pick up on this screen. If required, does everybody see what happened there? Everybody see?
Yeah.
So Windows woke up and it said, okay, wait a minute. Gosh, I have to reload some drivers. Let's restart. That's what it's doing. That's a good sign. But we'll go ahead and pick up the trail on this on Friday, and we'll complete the rest of the content review. And I'm going to, oh yeah, see, it was running updates in the background when it froze, and I couldn't unwake it because the updates were posting in a weird manner. So now that I've had a chance to shake off the kinks, the update process is loading, and I have a machine I can work with, right? So that's one of the strongest advantages of working virtual machines for deployment, is that if you run into snags along the way, it's a lot easier to pull out a hard disk from a virtual machine than it is to do a physical one, right? That's it for today. Please complete your solution, and if you run into problems, contact me. If you'd like to have some additional support, I'm your safety net. We can get through it. You want to finish the solution and finish review of the material that's been posted in the references folder at a minimum. And then Friday, we'll go ahead and get ready and walk through some additional things, and then you'll have at your first attempt of the Module 1 assessment. Can anyone think of any questions that would be appropriate based on the details we reviewed today? Is there a point of curiosity, or can you think of a question based on what we've shown you?
So I remember that when we used to make a server, we used to actually set it to like fixed size. I don't know if I blinked for a second and you changed that, but I didn't really see that happen. Is that already predetermined by the virtual machine?
That's a great question. When we transplanted the hard disk, it was already a fixed size from the old virtual machine. So the reason that you didn't see it today is because we're not rebuilding the server from scratch with install media and recreating a new hard disk. We're reusing the old hard disk to make quick work of recasting or transplanting a server instead of having to rebuild from scratch. So we cheated death in a sense. We reused the same virtual hard disk since it was already created, fixed and large, 40 gigs big. We didn't have to do that part of the process this time. That's why you didn't see it. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
It's a great question. Any others? So why did I want to do this? Well, I knew I had a server from last season. I knew the activation key would be, a little thorny. And if I can resuscitate my previous server and go on working, I don't have to use my phone to enter a bunch of codes to get a new install to work. And starting over from scratch means you have to load updates, you have to do some maintenance, you have to rename your system. There's more work to it. All right,